Think to yourself for a moment. When was the last time you felt helpless, despaired, like it was just so out of reach? A professional uncertain where their career or business will take them. Helpless. A young man or woman overcome by fear, anxiety, worry, concern. Helpless. A young couple uncertain of the world their children will grow up in tomorrow. Helpless. A parent seeing his children refusing their advice and guidance. Helpless. And the list goes on and on and on. The moment you feel helpless, the moment it's easiest to let go of your closeness with Allah and your firm faith in Him alone, that's the moment that will determine whether you will come into the guardianship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or whether you will be left to face the rest of these moments all alone. But what if we started seeing those moments with the vision of our hearts? What if those moments transform us from feeling helpless to opportunities of strength and growth? What if we can use these moments to save us from the waves of doubt and anchor us on the shore of certainty? Prophet Yunus alayhi salam, Jonah, he faced his breaking moment where he felt helpless when he gave up on his people who rejected his call to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and to believe in the message that he came with. He gave up on his people. He allowed the helplessness to consume him. And he turned away from those people, even making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their destruction. And as Ibn al-Qayyim says, Yunus abandoned the da'wah of the people that would have saved them from drowning in their kufr, their disbelief. And so in like manner, the people of the ship abandoned him and allowed him to drown to his physical death. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sends a whale to swallow him, and he's in the stomach of that whale. Imagine that scene with me for a moment. In the middle of a dark night, in the middle of a large ocean, in the darkness of the stomach of a whale. Where am I? And where did I land myself in? And here Allah teaches us how the believer approaching this moment of helplessness reacts in the moment and immediately calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yunus alayhi salam, he calls upon Allah and he says, "My Lord, I have been granted a place to pray, to call out to you, where no one else has worshipped you before. In the stomach of a whale, in the bottom of the ocean, in the darkness of the night." He's realizing that he had cracked in that moment of helplessness, and he did something unbefitting by abandoning his people and fleeing before he was granted permission by his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was the cause of his trial. And he calls upon Allah and he says, "La ilaha illa anta subhanak, inni kuntu min al-zalimin." There is no God worthy of worship except you. Glory be to you. I have certainly done wrong. There's a moment of realization. I'm completely helpless, and you, my Lord, are the source of all help, of all comfort, of all hope. It's about that moment when your covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being tested, that you obey, you worship, you turn to Him, regardless of how bad it got or how helpless you feel. My brothers and sisters, it's not about if the moment comes, but when. And what defines that is my response. It's about realizing the perfection of Allah, and that when you as a servant feel helpless, there is nothing beyond the realm and the power of Allah. I find my strength in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amr ibn Qais, he very beautifully says, 3 verses in the book of Allah, the Quran, that I am satisfied and fulfilled by them over all the creation. I never feel helpless when I remember those 3 specific verses. The first one is in Surah Yunus, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And if Allah inflicts you with harm, no one can undo it except Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if He intends good for you, no one can withhold it except Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He grants it to whoever He wills of His servants, and He is the most forgiving, the most merciful.
وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُوَ وَإِن يُرِدْكَ بِخَيْرٍ فَلَا رَادَّ لِفَضْلِهِ يُصِيبُ بِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ.
And the second verse is in Surah Fatir, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whatever mercy Allah opens up for people, no one can withhold it. And whatever He withholds, no one but Him can release it. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise.
ما يفتح الله للناس من رحمة فلا ممسك لها وما يمسك فلا مرسل له من بعده وهو العزيز الحكيم.
And the third is in Surah Hud, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there is no moving creature on this earth whose provision is not guaranteed by Allah. And only Allah knows where it lives and where it is laid to rest. Everything is written in a perfect record.
وما من دابة في الأرض إلا على الله رزقها ويعلم مستقرها ومستودعها كل في كتاب مبين.
The Basir, he enters into those moments with this mentality, not questioning the wisdom or reason of my Lord, but asking myself the question, what does Allah want to see from me in this moment? How am I supposed to react? It's the realization that it is my strength in Allah that allows me to push through and come out on the other side stronger than before. It's about realizing that the nature of this world as decreed by Allah is one of constant test, hardship, and tough moments. And using these moments to draw me closer to Allah, not further, make me more certain in my faith, not thrown by the waves of doubt. Your vision of the heart sees every moment of helplessness as an opportunity to hold onto the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your moment of helplessness, it's a moment of closeness and return back to Allah. And that, the only way out of helplessness is through Allah, because indeed, He is the most powerful, the all-knowing. Your vision of the heart reminds you that this is a moment of earning the love and mercy of Allah, and eventually, my way to heaven, where these moments of helplessness, they cease to exist.
أشكو إليك أمورا أنت تعلمها ما لي على حملها صبر ولا جلد وقد مددت يدي بالذل مبتهلا إليك يا خير من مدت إليه يد فلا تردنها يا رب خائبة فبحر جودك يروي كل من يرد.